slipping them in. Ed, you have a sensitivity. You have a chance. You can make it. Listen to the voices no matter how harsh it gets. I think he meant the razor rape I got in the earlier years. Before it turned out to having Satanists go to the bathroom on my clothing. Megatron's Summit something. Part of the man doing it is a comedian. I just don't remember his name. He's like intellectually this. That's how he talks. I think he was about 35 to 40 last time I saw him. Convergence, faster, cheaper computing power, global summit.
entrepreneurs, I think that's the most important thing that we should be looking at. What are the new business models? Not just the new technology. Right? Being an expert in the problem and not the technology, but the business models are where the juice is. The second thing going on right
It's him
now,
talking right now.
this, and hopefully you can as well, is that the rate at which technology is getting faster is itself getting faster. We are accelerating the rate of technological acceleration. And there's a multitude of things that are coming together to make this possible, right? More people are now connected than ever before. They have access to more computational than ever before. And they have, the technology they're using is cheaper than ever before. And they're getting access to more intelligent supplementation than ever before. So we're literally accelerating, the first derivative of our acceleration. I hate to call it the jerk, but anyway, for the physicists, it is getting faster and faster. And so I want to call out a few meta trends that are important, and I'll speak about just
how do
a
you
few
feel?
of these. The
Mr.
first thing you saw on part of the slides,
175,000
I'll show some of
episode.
them again that Will showed, which is
Do you know the cast of Seinfeld made $175,000 an episode?
Realize that as we see the crisis foods network and all the negativity in the world, but what people have access to is more abundant than ever before. We're seeing an acceleration as things demonetize. Things are becoming, products and services becoming cheaper and cheaper and becoming available to more and more people. And this in itself is creating more increased global abundance. Everyone, everywhere, is being connected at gigabit connection speeds. And this is going to change every one of our lives.
It's a comedian I associate with Gary Shandling because they're funny, they're this, they're that, but you don't see them very often on TV.
On this planet. IoT and IoE, we'll go into this in a little bit. And what this allows is us to ask questions like we've never asked before. If everything is connected, we're heading towards a world where you can know anything, anytime. Number 6, a revolution in personalized, autonomous, fast, and cheap transportation of people and things. Right? My dear friend Ramez Nam talks about this beautifully. Increasing human intelligence. And this is about AI and AR support of you to learn what you need to know in exactly the moment you need it, but also this incredible transformation before us on VCI. Increasing human longevity, health span, increasing capital abundance, and increasing global cheap energy, again, what Ramez talks about so beautifully. So these are 10 of the 20 that I'm tracking. I'd like to dive into a half of these and talk about what they mean to us. So I want to pause here that I don't think any of us truly understand how fast the world is changing. And I think ultimately that's the role that we at Singularity University, all of us play here at SU and in our Abundance Digital and Abundance 360 ecosystem, is to help us understand, keep our finger on the pulse of how fast things are changing. A lot of people are fearful about the future. In fact, most people are fearful about the future. Hopefully, as we have these conversations, we get excited about the future, excited about the tools that we have to solve problems. So, let's hit on this idea again. I can't help but focus on it because you are, as members of the Singularity community, really the representatives to the world to help and pause the conversation to say, hold it, I know that you see all this negativity around you, but let's look at the data. Let's take a second and look at the data where the world truly is, because again, the news media's news cycles are designed to connect our eyes to their advertisers, and we pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news, and that's all we get fed. And as a result, all we see is the world in hell in a handbasket.
His first name is Richard.
We saw this, let me summarize, we tripled the per capita global income over the last 100 years. The lifespan has doubled, the cost of food has dropped 20-fold, energy's dropped 100-fold, transportation thousands of fold, communications millions if not billions of fold cheaper. Take a look at this. This is partly what you saw Will present.
It's Richard
which
something.
Is, increasing global prosperity or a decrease in the number of people living below extreme poverty. But check out this last portion right here, which is the data presented at the start of this year. it's continuing and it's accelerating. Right? The world is secretly, quietly becoming more and more abundant. Increasing global literacy, at this point, Will showed it, but again, what was life like when half of your children died before the age of 5? What did it feel like to live in that kind of a world where you didn't name your child because it hurt less if
Found
they
him.
died? The chance of having a mother die in childbirth
Richard Lewis.
has become de minimis in much of the world.
This guy doing this summit meeting, this global summit,
average life expectancy
whatever,
has doubled.
is partly
We're gonna talk about, I'll talk about
Richard
this
Lewis,
during other
comedian.
programs that were on the verge of doubling.
He came up on a
life
search of
expectancy
comedians
again.
1970s.
Right, the most precious thing we
Richard,
have is our
well,
lives,
you are
the time,
1970s,
and how we
aren't
use
you?
that time.
That wasn't the search term that worked.
I was having a conversation at lunch with family about exponential family luncheon about
Okay.
increasing
Global summit.
global populace.
Create
Aren't you
futures.
concerned about that? Bill Gates has 2 great
Is
TED
this a
talks on
Trump
this
thing?
subject. But look at this. In the 1950s, about 100 families had 6 or more children per family. You do 2 things to a population center. You make them healthier and better educated. The number of children per family plummet. You can see how rapidly that's decreasing over time. Here's another way to look at it. The child replacement rate for the Earth is 2.1 children per family is what allows break even. We're decreasing. In the U.S., we're below the U.S. population replacement level. Globally, we're at 2.42. In red, airlines are clearly still the safest means of transportation on the planet. That blue line are automobiles. When we get to autonomous cars, those will drop down to a near 0 death rate as well. Global disaster deaths. So what's happening in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s? Why the number of deaths per hurricane, per flood, per storm, per epidemic, why are they decreasing? It's not that there are less of them. It's that we have access to the data to predict them better, to get help in that golden hour, right?
This is like a
These
Trump
technologies are
college
supporting
thing.
this, and this is from Steve Jobs' book called The Better Angel.
Trump University, where he ended up not teaching anybody and robbing a lot of people.
Human history, which is really hard to fathom, but it's true. So let's talk about why this is happening. Why now? For me, it's the impact of these exponential technologies. It's the result of the technologies that you guys are creating, investing in, utilizing to make the world a better place. Another impact of exponential technologies is to take what was scarce and make it abundant over and over again. And what would you think of as more scarce than a beautiful 4, 5, 6 carat diamond? Right? There's a company not far from here called the Diamond Foundry, and one end comes methane, water, electricity. Out the other end comes perfect diamond, 6 carats, 8 carats, 10 carats. How big would you like? Would you like imperfections in it? No problem. You want to see what a real diamond ring looks like? Check this out. All of a sudden, we go from scarcity to abundance to a squanderable abundance of what we want. Technology is the force that takes what used to be scarce and makes it abundant. So inside your industries, inside your services, how do you take what you're doing right now and go from a scarcity mindset of I'm going to put my arms around it and meter out a little bit at a time to an abundance mindset? Because if you're not doing that, someone else is. So what do you think of as scarce? Energy? No. We live on a planet bathed in 6,000 times more energy from the sun than we consume as a species. Right? We used to kill whales on the ocean to light the nights. Then we ravaged mountainsides for coal. Then we started killing under the water. We are not far from a penny per kilowatt hour from the sun. And me when I say the poorest planet on the sun is coming. We have abundant energy, that means abundant water. We just awarded last year the Water Abundance X Prize, pulling liters, 1,000 liters, 2,000 liters out of the atmosphere in 24 hours from renewable energy. Turns out there are quadrillions of liters of water in the atmosphere distributed evenly around the planet. If you have energy, you've got water. Time, money, resources, expertise, we'll talk about some of these. The other thing that's going on is we're going from those things that used to be so scarce, right? Bandwidth used to be computational power, as is storage costs, as is sequencing the human genome from $100 million to below $1,000 today. And one of the reasons that the world is getting better is that you as entrepreneurs are trying more and more startups, more and more crazy ideas. Remember, the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And inside your company, if you're stuck on trying reasonable ideas, predictable ideas, literally expected ideas, you're never going to have a breakthrough. So where and how do you
I've
try
exposed
that?
something
So
real
2000,
sensitive to
you
them.
started internet-based companies
Real
that had $5 million
sensitive.
cost for the
I shouldn't
servers,
have added
the
to them.
software,
They
for the
made me
people,
add it.
for the bandwidth. You know, that dropped over
Singularity
time to the point where
University.
it's now cheap. It's now easy to have an idea, go put something up on the web, maybe go start a Kickstarter campaign or whatever it might be, and test and find out if people want to buy it. So the number of ideas being tried is exploding. It's not that entrepreneurs have necessarily better ideas. They may, you may. It's just that entrepreneurs were willing to try and experiment and fail and try again over and over again, while large corporations have to have it approved properly.
It's in Santa Clara, California.
Internally, and so we only try that idea at the end of the process where it's dead on delivery.
The Singularity Group is a community of entrepreneurial leaders making a positive impact at planetary scale.
You know, we have an unprecedented
That's
influx of capital
pretty bold
around
statement.
the world from a range of areas. So back in 2017, in the U.S. and in Europe, we hit all-time capital highs. Then we
Richard
hit them
Lewis
again
says
in 2018. We're going to hit them again
they're trying to
in
fool the
2019.
ones that
More and
are
more capital available
transforming into
to
the fourth
invest
dimension and then
Right?
presumably to the
Crowdfunding is hitting
fifth.
all-time highs.
They're trying to catch them
By
with something that's not authentic.
which means it doesn't matter where you live.
Or it's not sincere. It may
If you've
appear
got
authentic,
an
but it's
idea,
not
a
sincere.
meritocracy. You can be in the middle of no place with a good
Thank you,
bandwidth
Mr.
connection and
Lewis.
have your ideas funded by the crowd. I love this quote from Masasan, who's just raising his next multi-$100 billion fund. I totally believe the singularity is coming in the next 30 years. That's why I'm in a hurry to aggregate cash and to invest.
He's quoting Masayoshi
Next
Son,
decade, we're
S-O-N,
gonna see the transformation of every
CEO of
single industry,
SoftBank.
not some, every industry. We're also going to create more wealth in the next 10 years than we have in the entire past century. And here's what's going on. Capital abundance plus the 6Ds, demonetization in particular, means that entrepreneurs are running more experiments, more crazy ideas, and more business models. Right? YouTube gets started by Chad Hurley on his credit cards and sold to Google for $1.6 billion 18 months later. There's no way to explain Lyft
Wow.
and Uber to enterprise rental car and
Thanks.
taxi fleets over
I'm
here.
impressed.
Check this out. This is an eye chart, but on the far left is 2011, and each of these logos is a billion-dollar startup. Look how fast it accelerates to 2015. The rate at which entrepreneurs, all of you, are creating companies, shots on goal. Maybe one in 1,000 will succeed and be a
Supporting
unicorn.
startups that serve humanity. This is SU
And then
Ventures.
today, we're at 360 unicorns in 2019.
Our mission is to help solve the global grand challenges, the
Another mega trend going
GGCs,
on right now
by
that is so
activating
impactful, so
SU's
important for us to
global
be talking
community
about, is the
to
notion
support
that
impact
everyone
technology and
is
startups
about to be
in their
connected
efforts
at
to
gigabit
secure
connections.
connections, customers, and
So
smart capital.
today, in the US,
Sounds like they might be
China,
stealing
Europe,
patents
Asia,
or
around
something.
The world is the beginning of the deployment of 5G. Right?
One of
So
the guys
here's
on the
device over here, instead
on
of
the in the
10
photo
megabits or 100
said that,
megabits,
gave
it's
that
now
to me.
at 10 gigabits. What that means is you can download a motion picture in under a second. It means you can take your LG or Samsung TV and put it on the wall and plug it in. It's got a connection automatically. It's going to transform, and it's intersecting with AR and VR and AI. Besides 5G, it's Google Loon, it's Greg Weiler, and his OneWeb constellation is being launched right now as we speak.
One of the endorsements is a
It's
little
SpaceX
flowery.
with their Starlink,
It's Dimitri.
launching
I'll get it in a minute.
12,000 satellites, giving us gigabit connection speeds. But it's not just that. Amazon has got their Kuiper satellite system of 3,000
Let me show
satellites,
this one.
$100 billion. In fact, there is a global explosion in
Dimitri
connectivity
Starson,
around the world.
S-O-N
We're allowed
PhD.
to reach a
Dimitri,
period of time in the next 4 to 6
D-M-I-T-R-I-Y.
years. Right
I don't
now,
want to
right
read the
here, us
endorsements, a
talking
little
about this,
silly.
where we're going from half the world being connected to
Oh, he's a
2.8 billion
PhD,
people to the
CEO,
entire
Escape
globe being connected,
Dynamics.
where all of us are connected all
Wonder
the
what that
time,
means.
everywhere.
No.
Right? So what happens
Sounds like
when
Timothy Leary, you
4.2
know?
billion new minds enter the global conversation?
Drop
These
in,
4
drop
billion
out.
new individuals coming online,
Drop the LSD in,
they're all
drop
going to
out
run,
of your
create,
life.
to discover, to consume, to buy, to upload. They're all entrepreneurs. How do you tap into them? How do you tap into that incredible wisdom?
Dimitri
and
Starson,
intelligence around the
PhD,
world?
CEO, Escape Dynamics.
At the end of the day, these are tens of trillions of dollars floating the global economy. The old economic systems are no longer valid. No one counts these 4 billion minds entering the global economy. And if you thought the world was going fast, wait till 4 billion new inventors come online. They're all connected to gigabits. They all have access to Google or Baidu. They all have access to quantum computing in the cloud. They all have access to 3D printing in the cloud. What are they going to start to create? Because these 4 billion people, the last billion, the rising billion, they've been entrepreneurs to survive. And they're about to get access to incredible tools. We're going to see this uptick in the rate of global innovation that we've never seen before. This is the acceleration of the acceleration. But besides people being connected, it's everything. Right? My friends at Cisco talk about the IoT, the IoE, 20 billion connected devices, 1 trillion sensors. Right? Your Oura Ring, your Apple Watch, your devices you're wearing on your body. A decade later, it's 500 billion connected devices, 100 trillion sensors. And from McKinsey, $6.2 trillion of global economics in the next 5 years from this everything being connected. Huge wealth, right? When I talk about creating more wealth in the next 10 years than we have in the entire past century, it's things like this.
Lila.
This example,
The article, the first blog
car
article
data,
I clicked
right?
on,
You never think about
the first name of the woman is
autonomous
Lila.
cars being a mechanism for creating data value. But car
Lila
data, autonomous
Faria.
cars alone will generate $750 billion of revenue by 2030. So if we've got sensors everywhere, hundreds of private satellites, thousands of private satellites, millions of drones, every autonomous car generating 750 megabytes of data per second, and augmented reality headwear, your Magic Leap with forward-looking cameras, seeing everything, we're heading towards a future where you're going to be able to know anything you want, anytime you want, anywhere you want. And I can't express the impact of this.
So the Global Summit of
So,
Singularity
I want you to
University
imagine
is
that
capitalizing
your employees,
on
your CEOs, your kids,
God, the
right?
Holy
Just my
Spirit of
kids.
God, stuff like that,
It's
just
not
like
what
usual.
you know, it's the questions you
Stealing
ask.
ideas.
It's soon to be available and possible to know anything. You can ask your AI, what's the average spectrum
They're trying to
color
draw in
of a man's
entrepreneurs
razor
with
in his
great
life,
inventions,
and it will find that out
futuristic
for you.
things, and they're
Or
going to
walking
steal
down
their
Madison
patents.
Avenue and does it
They're going to not
correlate
let them
to
patent their work.
a advertising campaign. You're going to start to ask questions that were never askable before because the data is there to be mined, open sourced, available there all the time. We're heading towards a future of perfect knowledge where you can know anything you want, anytime, anywhere. Another place we're heading, and it's the convergence of augmented intelligence, is the notion that we're heading to just-in-time education, where 5G plus AI plus augmented reality will allow you to learn something in the moment you need it, in that exact moment in time.
10 companies doing good for the earth. Just because Singularity University is promoting them doesn't mean they're bad companies.
One of the companies that I've been tracking in LA that's
One is Patagonia,
creating a
number
virtual
one.
AI version of Tony Robbins. If you know Tony, he's a friend of Singularity University. He and I are writing a book together on longevity. And this company is basically
Number 2 is
digitizing
called A
Tony
Good
Robbins
Company.
into an app. It's
Number 3 is
consuming
called
everything
Chipotle
he's ever
Mexican
said in
Grill.
video, on tape,
Okay, they're
on
bad
audio,
companies
in
because
his
Rob
books.
Rob
And it's
Hayden
taking that body of
invited me to
knowledge
dinner at
and
Chipotle.
training a machine learning protocol that if you ask the machine learning version of Tony, it answers the same as he would. Can you imagine that? Right? Can you imagine that process of training up a machine learning protocol with enough examples, enough over and over again? So imagine being able to have multiple versions of yourself. This is one of the directions that we're heading. But it's not just using AR and 5G and machine learning. It's also increasing human intelligence. There's probably nothing more valuable to the president of a country or the president and CEO of a company than the intelligence of your employees. And we're at the very beginning of the dawn of massive multi-billion-dollar investments of connecting our brains with the cloud. Right? We have 100 billion neurons and 100 trillion synaptic connections. And everything you've thought or feel or hear or learn
Etsy?
find in those synaptic connections.
Etsy can't be a bad guy.
Right? So Brian Johnson at Kernel, Elon at Neuralink, Open Water, Facebook, Google, IBM, and many
I hope
governments
it's not.
are
I
investing
find the best
billions of
stuff there.
dollars. If we can connect our brains with the clouds, and you can think and Google as you think and get the answer.
I'm gonna go back to my original.
This was the
Just
prediction.
because a company is listed here doesn't mean it's a bad company. Look, they're bad guys.
His prediction is we're going to be there in
I'm gonna hold out for Etsy because I love
So
Etsy.
what's it like?
Etsy.com.
Level AI by 2029 and our
Orbital
brains are connected to the
Systems.
cloud by
Orbital
2035.
Systems.
If you
Number
thought
5.
The world was moving fast now, get ready. And if you thought this prediction of 2035 was crazy, look at the investments by the world's
Adidas.
leading tech companies and what they're focusing
I don't know
on
if they're a
today.
good company or
For me,
bad.
this gives credence to that kind of a predictive. It's the very beginning, right? We're just, a dozen doublings away from being there. What else is going on right now? Another meta trend I track and focus on is extending the healthy human lifespan. How do we add 20 or
7
30
is
healthy
Unicorn
years on your
Snot.
life? How do we
Probably a
get
bad guy
100 years
company
old
because
to 60?
Jennifer
And then how do we make
Schuff
120
and
or
her husband
150? What is
opped me at
aging anyway?
134th
Is it
Avenue,
natural?
and
Should
she
all
turns out to
see it?
be
Or is it a disease?
a
Our
member
bodies
of the
were never
Unicorn
evolved
group
to
out of the
live past
Pentagon.
age 30. You'd go into puberty at age 13, and you'd have a baby. And by the time you were 26, your baby was having a baby. And before we had Whole Foods and McDonald's and food was scarce, the best thing you could do was give your bits back to the environment and not steal food from your grandchildren's mouths. But that's changed. And it's this decade that extraordinary work is going on. I've had the pleasure to co-found 3 companies, and I'm tracking a dozen others that I'm investing in or supporting. And these companies have in the lab, I don't have Viome on here in Naveen's company, but in the microbiome side as well, these companies in the lab are focusing on how do we extend the healthy human lifespan. And we still can't take it with us. So at the end of your life, what is another 20 or 30 healthy years worth to you? It's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, right? So one of the areas is we can now begin to digitize ourselves and basically create a 100 gigabit file of our bodies, and we can do this every year. Every year I go in and get digitized at something called the health nucleus. But here's the results. For the first 1,200 patients who went through this,
There's a company Beyond
digitization
Meat, and they're
process,
being criticized.
these were people who are presumed healthy, right? And so we think we're healthy. We're all optimists, but we don't actually truly know.
Number 9 is
I'm
Beyond
a
Meat.
pilot. I fly 2 different airplanes. Before I take off, I make sure all.
If you thought concrete was bad, prepare to be shocked. 18% of all greenhouse emissions are produced by animal agriculture. That's why Beyond Meat has created plant-based meat alternatives that taste almost identical to your favorite fast food staples. Blah, blah, blah. I think they want to get people off protein. Oh no, Burt's Bees. I like Burt's Bees products. So I'm back to just because a company's listed on here doesn't mean they're bad guys, but they're saying there's some valid truth to that Beyond Meat company. I told Richard once, Henry Jr., while we still lived on Milledgeville Drive, that I learned that people who are vegetarians have a higher capacity for telepathy. Or being a vegetarian increases telepathy. And he started shoving meat down my throat. Mostly chicken. I wasn't thinking of becoming a vegetarian because all my life I've enjoyed a good steak. I like meatloaf. I like hamburgers, especially if they're grilled. Especially if they're grilled with a good spice or whatever. And now they're trying to get me off meat. Burt's Bees. I don't know, I've always liked their products. They've got a good lip moisturizer stick, a chapstick. It's not chapstick brand. I don't know what all I bought from Burt's Bees. No, that was number 10. So this is important. Singularity University. It sounds like Trump University. Charge a high tuition. Steal your ideas. And then, I don't know. Mm. I'm trying to identify the guy giving the presentation. Peter Diamandis. Somebody says it's Diamandis, but it looks like the word diamond. Definitely a Richard Lewis in him. God corrects me. In my mind and heart, I meant to say, definitely a Richard Lewis on him. Satanists have worn down as manipulators of people. They use the same tactics, they copy from others. He's got a lot of Richard Lewis in him. There's a mega trends. I remember a book out there, you probably do too. This is called Meta Trends, and meta probably means metaphysical. I think they expect this to rake a lot of dough in, a lot of money, a lot of dough. Metaphysical is something like paranormal. Paranormal. Mm-hmm. Peter Diamandis is CEO of Zero Gravity Corporation. I also want to read Richard Lewis's bio. Peter H. Diamandis is a Greek-American engineer, physician, and entrepreneur best known for being founder and chairman of the X Prize Foundation. His education is listed as Harvard University and Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Okay. I think this is a CIA Xerox. His degrees. Oh, yeah, I'll send you the webpage. He's being rude to me, making rude faces to me. I'll look up Richard Lewis next time I think of it. I'm not gonna look up his bio right now. Sorry.
Our brain has 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections, and the way
Sounds
that
a
we
little
think
like Richard
is
Lewis.
best described as local and linear. And the world back when our brain was evolving, 200,000 years ago, and our prefrontal cortex 2 million years ago, the world back then was very constant. Nothing changed generation to generation. Nothing changed millennium to millennium. And whatever affected you was within a day. Today, the world is very different. Today, the world is very exponential. Things are changing every century or every decade. It's not even changing every year. A lot of times, the world is changing every month. And things that affect you are not, in the country next door. They're on the other side of the planet. And so, if you think about that, our brains are not wired to really anticipate the rate of change, and it's for this reason that we have these cognitive, conflicts and these misinterpretations of how fast the world is changing. So you're going to hear these elements again and again, but we are looking at the world as humans in a very linear mindset, while at the same time the world is growing exponentially, right? We understand these concepts. You're going to be hearing about them over and over again: computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, augmented virtual reality, blockchain are doubling in power year on year. And the difference between this red line of linear humans and this yellow line, these exponential technologies, is either stressful or it's an amazing opportunity, depending on your point of view. And so Ramez mentioned this, and I'm going to hit on a few of the thoughts that he hit, but to give you a little more details. In 1996, Kodak is at the top of its game. It had a brand like you could not purchase.
I think a child of God will recognize this symposium in the course in Singularity University as a little hokey.
Photographs in black and white on a tape drive, on the order of a few megapixels, a fraction of megapixel, 0.01 megapixel. And back then, they were valued as a company that was in the paper and chemicals business. And when they
Satanists reaffirm that tobacco is good for your lungs.
Commercialize the digital camera, a few decades later, Kodak goes bankrupt, put out a business by the very technology that they had invented. In the same year that Kodak files for bankruptcy, another company.
One of the first things I want to do when they make my breathing difficult
for $1 billion. The difference
is light a cigarette.
was that Instagram had 13 employees. And this moment in time where a linear thinking company like Kodak is being disrupted by exponential technologies is going to be happening over and over again. Let me give you another example here. This, by the way, is what it looks like. You can see that yellow line is film photography, which literally falls off a cliff, while digital photography is taking off, and last year was 1.6 trillion digital photographs. Here's another company. You guys may remember a company called Blockbuster. It used to be prevalent here in the United States. It would rent you those video cassettes for watching movies.
Shit, he looks
And
like
you can
Casper
see that
Weinberger, too.
Blockbuster
Oh, shit.
company is falling off a cliff. And here's this small company called Netflix coming along. Now, in 2010, when Blockbuster goes bankrupt, Netflix is worth $2.2 billion. But when you're riding on top of an exponential technology, this is what happens. 8 years later, it jumps from $2 billion to $150 billion. There's no way in the world that a linear company like Blockbuster could have opened anywhere near enough stores to have created that kind of value. But that's only half the story. Here's the other half of the story. Look at this green line here. The year, it's late 2008. This is during a Blockbuster investor call in which the CEO of Blockbuster, who has twice had the option to buy Netflix, basically says neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on the radar screen in terms of competition. And so the question is, how much more wrong could you be? And the challenge is that as CEOs of companies, and I've had the pleasure to start, 21 different companies at this point, we become enamored with our company, with the way we do business. We become defensive if anybody comes out and says, hey, have you considered this? And it's critically important that we question and we don't defend what kind of technology we use, our business models, and so forth. Let me show you another example. This is data from the United States.
It says he was former director of the Office of Management and Budget, but that wasn't his highest post. I'm not even familiar with that post for him.
You've heard of many of these: Sears, JCPenney, Best Buy, Macy's, Target. And down there at the bottom is little Amazon at $17.5 billion. And if you were to go to any of these CEOs of these large retail chains and said, listen, this little company, Amazon, is going to eat your lunch. The question is, how would you have reacted if you were the CEO of Sears or Macy's or JCPenney? I think you'd probably say, what are you kidding me? Amazon, it's a bookseller, for God's sakes. And it has no stores. But 10 years later, this is what happens, right? Minus 94%, minus 90%, minus 71%. And down there is Amazon back in 2016 at nearly minus 3,000%.
I think Casper Weinberger was a Secretary of Defense.
And what we're seeing
That's
is
what I think.
Amazon as a nimble, agile company doing something the other companies didn't dare do. They're disrupting up and down the food chain. So Amazon begins by selling books, and it says, hey, you know what? We're going to start to cannibalize our suppliers, but we're going to publish books.
Defense Secretary.
We're going to also buy
That's what I think.
airplanes and deliver them, and we're going to start going into adjacencies like movies and food, healthcare, insane. So we're going from an era of I've got an idea to I run a billion-dollar company faster than any time ever in human history, right? So YouTube was started by a friend, Chad Hurley, on his credit cards for $1.6 billion. He started on his credit cards and sells it to Google for $4.6 billion 18 months later. Instagram, which was purchased for $1 billion by Facebook, and people laughed at that valuation. And, today it's a $30 billion asset. There's no way to explain Uber and Lyft to the CEOs of taxi car companies. This is an eye chart, and I don't want you to read this. I want you to simply see this is the rate at which we are creating these unicorns, these billion-dollar companies. On the far left, 2011, they're happening, 3-4 times a year. And then as we head into 2015, 16, 17, we're getting literally dozens and dozens per year. So
Defense Secretary was Donald Rumsfeld.
Attend the Singularity University executive programs every month, and I always
Under Gerald
love
Ford and George W.
hearing
Bush.
the faculty
That
you can hear
isn't
about in a couple of
necessarily
days.
true.
And so, repetition
But it
makes
doesn't
for
interfere with the
real
5-year
penetration
gap
into our 100 trillion synaptic
that
connections.
we found, I think it
This
was
is
last
Gordon Moore,
evening.
one of the founders of Intel, who started the company in 1958. And in 1965, he publishes a very famous paper. And he says, we've noticed something at Intel, that over the last 7 years, the number of transistors on a piece of silicon has roughly doubled every 12 to 18 months. And then he said in this famous
What'd I
paper,
get?
it's likely to continue at
Yeah,
that
Richard
rate.
Lewis.
And that became known as Moore's Law.
Tell me.
And Moore's Law has continued for 50
So you were
years.
treating
But
last
let me
night.
give you a
I'm not sure
visual
if you were Liz Cheney.
representation of what that
Are you the
looks
daughter
like.
or the wife?
So in 1958, this
Are you the daughter?
is the first integrated circuit. It's 2 transistors, about 2 centimeters at a side. And fast forward to Intel's first commercial product. The year is 1971. The Intel 4004 is 2,300 transistors, about $1 each. Now, this is still incredible when I see 1971 that we had these. But let's fast forward to today. This is the Intel Core i9. And we've got over 7 billion transistors, less than a millionth of a penny each. And what we're seeing here,
Liz Cheney was
over
born
the
in
course
Madison,
of
Wisconsin.
47 years, is a 27 billion-fold price performance increase. So, I mean, this is incredible.
She's got a
power
daughter named
that
Kate
is
Perry.
transforming our world, and we think nothing of it. I'm sitting here at my desk,
And Elizabeth
and
Perry.
I look at my desk drawer, and I've got
Oh, it's
all
the
of these
daughter, it's the
phones
Cheney
just
daughter.
sitting here that I've thrown
Oh,
in
she's
my
with
desk
a
drawer
man,
over
Philip
years.
Perry.
And
She's
these are
married.
all massive
She was
supercomputers
publicly open
that
about
I
being
tossed in the drawer,
homosexual.
think nothing of them. But, literally, they have more computational power than the defense departments of nations had 20 years ago. Let's look at another example of exponential growth in our world today. In 1956, this was a 5 megabyte hard drive, and it cost $120,000. And if you happen to have your cargo airplane, you could move it from location to location. Now, we noticed when this happened, when a few decades later, it's now 25 times more memory, 128 megabytes, 1,000 times cheaper. But did we notice when this happened, when 9 years later, right on schedule, it's now 1,000 times more memory for the same price? Moore's Law, beautifully demonstrated. And, literally, it doesn't slow down. Right now, it's a terabyte on a little disk, a little, thumb SanDisk card that you could lose in your pocket. And the numbers are incredible. It's a 10 trillion-fold price, performance, volume improvement in memory density. And it's not slowing down, right? I'm an investor, as is Ray Kurzweil, in a company that's focused on nanotechnology. And the notion
it's coming
is we
too
can put all of
fast and
Google's data centers on a sugar cube in the future.
uh,
So this is a curve, again, you'll
coming a little
see
too
a
fast
dozen
for me
times,
too, I
100
think.
times over these next couple of days. This is the
So,
computational power growth.
yeah, Casper Weinberger was
1900
Secretary of
2010.
Defense.
It's a relatively smooth curve.
Had to be under
That
Reagan
red
because
segment
Bush had
at the
Romney.
end is what's called Moore's Law. But as Ray
Um,
Kurzweil describes it, this is
had
the
to be
law of
Reagan.
accelerating returns. It's not just computational growth from integrated circuits, it's electromechanical computers, relays, and vacuum tubes, transistors.
Yeah, it must be
We're
pretty
building
old
faster
now.
computers to go
Let's
to
see
the
what
next
year
generation of faster
Casper
computers
was
to the next
born.
generation. And it doesn't slow down. And so, literally, 5 years from now, in
1917.
2023, $1,000.
And he died in
buys you the
2006.
computational power
He
of
died
the
in
human
Bangor,
brain,
Maine.
10 to the 16 cycles per second. And then 25 years later,
Oh, it was
now
Cheney,
$1,000
okay.
US
He was born in
buys
San
you
Francisco,
the
California.
computational power of the entire human race. So, what's
So
going
he was
on
old
here?
when he died. Harry was
What's
born in
going on
15,
is that
and he was
faster,
74 in
cheaper computers.
1989.
We just
So
saw
Casper
in
Weinberger
the
would
United
be
States the announcement of the Summit computer.
83 plus 6, 89.
200,000
That's pretty old, that's pretty good.
computational
I mean,
power, beating the previous champion out of China. We've got this race.
I'm going to
for
read
more and
what
more
branch
computational
of
power.
the military he
This
was
year,
in
we're going to
World
see
War
quantum
II.
supremacy coming online. The first time that a quantum computer can be shown to do something that a classical computer cannot do. But
Oh, here it says,
computational
most notably
power
he was Secretary of
is becoming
Defense under
faster,
President Ronald Reagan
cheaper, always on,
from 81 to
available
87.
everywhere. You can think of
He
it
looks
as
like
almost
Efren Zimbalist.
infinite computing power. And that computing power is driving everything else. Again, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, synthetic biology, all of these technologies.
God,
And
this
you're gonna
Diamandis
hear
looks just like
experts
Richard
on
Lewis.
all of these.
Alright.
But here's what makes it special for me. I'm not thinking about any one of these. It's the combination, it's the convergence of 2, 3, or 4, the new business models, the new ecosystems that are coming up with these disruptive changes.
Yeah, he was
that
under
are
Reagan
really hard to
for 6
predict.
years.
So let me talk about some of these disruptive changes. Let's talk about what's changing in the world as a result of these exponential technologies. All right, the first concept is that we're taking anything that used to be
This is
scarce
from...
and making it abundant. So one of my favorite examples of this is a friend of mine's company.
2
in the
jobs
Bay Area,
before
not far from
Secretary of
Citadel
Defense.
University. It's
He
called
was
the Valley
Director of
Company.
Office of
And what would you
Management and
think of
Budget.
as
Chairman of the
scarce
Federal
and
Trade
perfect
Commission.
diamond, right? But this company, the Diamond Foundry, has built these machines. They built about 10 of them, and they're manufacturing as fast as they can. In one end comes methane, electricity, and water. Out the other end comes manufactured.
He has a
what
BA
they
and a
call
LLB.
California cultured
I
diamonds,
assume that's a law degree from
above-ground
Harvard.
diamonds. And they're real diamonds. 4 carats,
He was
6
Army.
carats, 8 carats, 10 carats. How big would you like them? And so when we think about
He was
this,
a
it's
captain.
something that used to be scarce becoming abundant. So
I don't know
what
what's
else
higher, a
do you think
captain
of
or a
as
major.
scarce? Honestly, I truly believe there's very little that is really scarce. You're going to hear from Ramez.
So you'll have to
about
figure it
energy,
out, or you'll
right?
have
We
to
used
know.
to go out to hunt whales on the open ocean to get whale oil to light our night
Casper
sky.
Weinberger
We
served in the
ravaged mountainsides
41st
for
Infantry
coal.
Division
Then
in
we
the
drilled
Pacific Theater of
kilometers
World War
under the
II.
ocean floor for oil.
And
Now
he
we
knows
know
that I
our
did the
planet
Pacific
is
Theater
made
for a while.
8,000 times more energy from the sun than we consume as a species in a year. And if you have abundant energy, you've got abundant water.
Weinberger's tenure as Secretary of Defense says, paraphrased, was a hard line against the Soviet Union.
These devices
Or Soviet
are gonna
Russia.
provide us
No, the
all
Soviet
the
Union.
healthcare, all the learning that we need.
He was at odds with the State Department at that time, and I don't know who that would be.
Lifespan,
He promoted the Strategic Defense Initiative. That's shooting nukes from space.
Initial coin offerings, these
Oh, he was indicted in Iran-Contra,
we're seeing
but
these
received a pardon before going to trial.
literally trillion-dollar funds coming in to invest in AI and
Who gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom? In 1987, that would be George Herbert Walker Bush, right?
So let's continue. Here's a great
And an
example.
honorary British knighthood from Queen Elizabeth
I love
II.
this is a recent
All you have to do is sell arms to
people say
Iran and you get
that
all this
scarcity
stuff.
of resources on this planet. Well, off the coast of Japan, just recently, within this past year,
Oh no, that's right.
group
Wait a
of
minute.
scientists found in the silt in the
Reagan was until 88, so it was
16
Presidential
million
Medal
tons
of Freedom
rare
in
earth
87
oxides,
was
enough
Reagan,
to
not
give
Bush.
us
Sorry.
all of the battery technology, phones, electric cars we need for something like
Reagan was elected in 80
years just off the coast of Japan.
and
Again,
out
every time
January,
technology
early
allows us to
January
look further and
of
further,
88.
we go
And
from
then
scarcity mindset
George Herbert
to
Walker
an
Bush was
abundance
president.
mindset. All
Right, I
let's
got
talk
that
about
right, don't I?
connecting the world. This is a massive
Clinton was
application
92 to
of
2000.
exponential technologies. What we're going to see
Mhm.
next year and in the few years that follow is the deployment of the 5G network, right? Your phones on 4G.
He
are
entered the United
generating
States Army as a
100
private,
megabit connections.
was commissioned as a
But
second
imagine when these
lieutenant
phones
at
are
the United
connecting
States
5G
Army Officer
10
Candidate
to
School in Fort
100
Benning,
gigabits,
Georgia.
where you can download a movie in a fraction of a second. and where this is covering the entire planet. But of course, it's
At
not
the end of the
just
war, he was a
5G.
captain
It's
on
also
General
Facebook
Douglas MacArthur's
with
intelligence
drones
staff.
and satellites, Google with balloons and satellites, Paul Jacobs, Richard Branson, Greg Weiler with 900 satellites funded by SoftBank. And then on top of that, you've got SpaceX with their Starlink launching over 4,000 satellites
Suck that ass,
starting
okay.
next year. And then they said, if
Suck
that's
big
not enough,
fat
we're going to add
ass.
another layer of 7,000 satellites. What this means is we're about to
Satanists
cover
have teased
the
me that I'm a
entire
hero.
planet in
The
gigabit
reason I would
connection
fall
speeds.
down and
Right? So
at my
here are the
own
numbers
feet
in
is because of
2010,
what I
8 years
made
ago,
it
we
through.
had about a
Everybody in my
quarter
life turning on me at one time, having
1.8
insecurity
billion
about where I lived.
people. Last year, it was half the
That
planet
sort of
at
thing.
3.8 billion. In the next 5 to 7 years,
For a time where
we're
the
going
next
to
meal would
connect
come
the
from.
entire planet.
Stuff like that.
Literally, another 4.2
Donna Jean Wagner
billion
Lasberg says
people who've
intelligent
never been
people have
connected
often suffered more
at
than that.
all are about
Well,
to
I'm
get
sorry.
connected to the global ecosystem.
I
To our
suffered higher
economic
than the
systems,
max
to
I
our
could handle.
cognitive systems, to our belief systems, everybody. So what are these 4 billion people?
I ask
but
you to make them
create,
suffer of
discover,
the appropriate amount
invent,
of pain,
desire?
shame,
You know, for
guilt,
me, this is
burdens,
one of the most
etc., etc.,
incredible events that's about to happen. We're going to see this hockey stick
and let their
accelerate
suffering
in
exceed
terms
the
of
maximum
innovation.
amount they can
Because these
take.
4 billion
God,
people
please,
are all going to have
affirm,
access to the
reaffirm,
world's
affirm,
information
reaffirm,
on Google and
to the
Baidu.
power of an infinite
They're
number
going
of
to have access to
infinities.
3D printing on the cloud. They're going to have access to AI. They're going to have access to a
They don't like me
expert
thinking fast and
economy,
talking
access to
fast.
crowdfunding. We're going to see the rate of startups and innovation explode.
I'm gonna stop recording and start
Tens
recording
of
again.